Aita for not wanting to help my best friend with her pregnancy. Because the baby daddy is my abusive ex-boyfriend. I did not expect to wake up and see my post received this many upvotes and comments. So I would first like to thank everyone who contributed. I read a few responses, which influenced the decisions I took today. Also, if you want to read my original post, you go into my profile, it'll be right under this one. I texted Dana that she was dead to me, and that what she did hurt more than any of the abuse I suffered. And that each time the baby kicks it feels like Ryan throwing a plate at her head. I told her to never talk to me or even look in my direction ever again. I hope that when she goes into labor that the baby kills her before she ever gets the chance to even see it. Then I blocked her. I still feel like shit after all of this. I don't feel like I'll ever get the proper closure I need. Until I hear that something terrible has happened to her, I'm going to try and move on from all of this on my own, thinking about quitting my job and moving so that she can't show up at my work or at my apartment. My face is all red and puffy because of how much I've been crying. I just wish my life gets easier now that I'm leaving. Stories number 2. My 38 meters wife 38F made a weird comment about someone and it broken something in me. Anyone dealt with this? Me 38 meters and my wife 38F were out with friends. I was saying something about doing a manual labor job and how if all jobs paid the same I would do that. Let's say private pool maintenance. She say, oh, there is this hot Insta guy that does that. I would buy a pool just so he could come to my house. I said, really, with a look like WTF. She goes, oh yeah, he's so hot, like a tatted up cowboy. Since then something broke. We've been together for 14 years. I've never been jealous or anything. I'm not even jealous, more hurt, like my attraction to her just turned off. For information, I'm relatively successful, own my own companies, drive nice cars, Ivy educated, plays college sports, was a Abercrombie model back in the day. Like I'm not some schmuck, not ripped like I was. Building companies and raising kids is time consuming. Has anyone dealt with this? Is there a way to fix it? Stories number 3. Am I overreacting about my boyfriend not wanting to travel with me and then going with his friends? I 23M have been dating my boyfriend 24 meters for almost a year and I've always wanted to travel with him. Whenever I bring it up, he always has an excuse. Usually he says he's trying to save money or he's busy with law school, when I promise to keep it cheap or brief. And within a 25-hour drive he's still not interested. However, I just found out he's planning a trip with his college buddies in a few months and I feel angry and hurt. I brought it up a few times to understand his reasoning and he just says it's different. He's always wanted to, and that I'm not the best planner. I'm considering breaking up with him over this because clearly he's interested in traveling, just not with me. Other than this, our relationship is mostly okay. And we occasionally go on dates where we live. I want to have memorable and fun adventures during my gap year before I go to medical school. Is it worth it blowing up our relationship over this one issue? How should I approach this? Am I overreacting? Stories number 4. Is being honesty a nice guy and vulnerable that bad for relationships with women? For the bigger part, I was this really honest, caring guy, and it came to love needed a shoulder to cry. Mine was there, needed help. I was there faster than Sonic and Hedgehog, and all I ever got was breakfast after breakfast, so I felt I needed a change. I started being cold and not caring anymore. I would just look at women as a way to please myself and get on with it, and it has been working magic. I wake up to over 10 texts and missed calls from women swearing their love for me. It's now at a point where I feel so empty. Would have loved to have that one person and listen to them tell me every tiny detail about their day, but then I remember how I act once in love and how obsessed I get and how I will be used and dumped for being a nice guy. Just use or ghost. Stories number 5. Girlfriend is moving in and have some questions. My 35M girlfriend 32F of 2 years and her 25-year-old are moving in over the next month or so, and I had a few questions. I'm not sure if this is the right sub or not, but I figured I could get some good advice here. Background: I have phone and live in my house for just over 9 years alone, so I haven't dealt with anyone paying rent in a house with my name on it. And this will be my first time living with a significant other. I don't want to sound pessimistic as I see no reason this relationship will not work, but I just want to protect myself in case it doesn't. Should she be signing a lease in this situation? And if she does not sign one, is there any way she would have access to any equity or rent she has contributed since the day she moved in? Also, will this rent affect either of our taxes in any way? I realize things may change one day if we were to get married, but just curious how things could play out in the current situation. I'm sure there are a few important things I'm overlooking, but I appreciate any feedback. Stories number 6. Recommendation for earbuds. Hey all. Long-time lurker, first-time poster in this thread. I was curious what recommendation people have for earbuds. I would really prefer noise cancellation, as I've had a great experience with this feature with my AirPod Pros. Context: I recently got AirPod Pros V2 to go with my iPhone this year. As I had an okay experience with the previous version, absolutely hate them now. They have an insanely hard time connecting. My last pair, one AirPod went quieter and they would only fix them for basically the cost of a new pair. They also have such a bad mic that people can barely hear me in certain settings, and as a result Siri misinterprets what I'm saying all the time. Update. Thank you all so much. I realize wireless headphones aren't really biffle, but thank you all for the responses. You have been super helpful. Stories number 7. Aita for making my bridesmaid wear a dress that makes her look fat. 1 to 6F have always loved the aesthetics of the Regency era, and I wanted to incorporate it in my wedding, so I decided that my bridesmaids will wear empire waist dresses, like the one seen in Bridgerton or Pride and Prejudice. Nearly all of my bridesmaids love this idea. However, one of my bridesmaids to 7F is very mad at me for insisting that they wear empire waist dresses. She claims that the dress looks unflattering on her due to her body proportions. She has broad shoulders, a large chest, large arms, a small waist, and thin legs. She claims that due to the high waistline and her large chest, her waist appears much larger than it actually is. She also says that that type of dress emphasizes her thick arms. She told me that those dresses made her look fat and triggered her past body dysmorphia and insecurities. She asked me if she could modify her dress to define her figure, but I said all the bridesmaids had to wear the same dress and I didn't want her to stand out. She said I was being selfish and that I wasn't taking into account other people's body types. I said she was acting extremely entitled. It's my wedding, and I shouldn't have to cater to her insecurities. Aita. Stories number 8. Aita for not wanting to share a hotel room with my teenage bills. Hi everyone. I'll just get right to it. My mill invited my husband and 24 and I have 24 on a family vacation to Hawaii with her husband, my husband's stepfather, and their 2 younger boys who are 15 and 13. She very kindly offered to pay for our hotel if we came with it. We are paying for our own flights, food, and entertainment. It's not a free vacation. My husband and I have been together 6 years married. For our marriage is great, and I have a great relationship with all my in-laws. There's no underlying beef with anyone here by any means. However, my mill texted me today and vaguely said we'd be sharing a room, and my husband later confirmed that meant we'd be sharing with the 2 teenage boys. I am not comfortable with that, to be honest. We have been on another vacation with them in the past in which my mill wanted us to share a room with her and the boys, and at that time my husband agreed. It felt weird and we paid for our own room. We do have the money to pay for our own room this time around too, especially since this vacation isn't happening for another 6 months this time. However, my husband said he doesn't understand what the big deal is. I feel is not appropriate. It makes me feel uncomfortable to share a room with 2 teenage boys, one of which seems to have a crush on me to the point that everyone in the family, including my husband, is aware of it. I don't even wear a 2-piece swimsuit around my in-laws because it makes me feel uncomfortable. I really just don't feel comfortable sharing a bedroom and bathroom with 2 teenage boys for a week, and would absolutely pay out of pocket to avoid that. Aita. Edit. A couple things. 1, this is my mill's birthday trip that she's been planning for a couple of years. I should have mentioned that to begin with. My apologies, y'all. To have just found out that apparently we can't upgrade the room, get a separate room. I guess the hotel is like a military hotel or something, and we either cannot book through it or there is no availability. It's almost midnight where I met, and my husband is asleep, so I will have to get more details on this tomorrow. I'll keep y'all updated on that, but just know I feel empowered enough after reading y'all's comments to make this a hill I die on. I appreciate the support from everyone. Stories number 9. I 19 meters have some embarrassing kinks. So while some of these aren't super rare, they're still embarrassing to me. I 19 meters have fetishes for girls' pant. Sing girls getting wedgies and ENF embarrassed naked females, so I would watch videos and look at photos of all these things to get off. I'd watch videos of girls showering and then someone going in and recording them. I loved the reactions the girls gave when they'd scream and try to cover up. But then, after post-nut clarity, I'd feel slightly bad realizing that those videos are probably real. And I just came to a girl who didn't consent to be naked online. It was still hot to me when I was horny, but I realized I felt bad doing it. Even now the concept is still hot to me if I'm horny, but again, I decided against it, so instead I started looking up pantsing wedgie and DNF drawings and animations. This lead me to DeviantArt, which is so shameful now. But it honestly really turned me on again. This is really embarrassing to me. But it turns me on seeing that these drawings can be as extreme as the artist dreams up. It's really sexy. For example, a girl could be hung from her underwear on a door and have it wrapped around her head. Thinking of a specific image that got me off last night, lol. Anyways, pretty shameful, but oh well. Stories number 10. What will happen with those towns, mainly rural, that have a lot of buildings, but an aging and falling population? Recently I passed by a small Spanish rural town and I noticed how it, despite being rural, had residential buildings of 4 or 5 floors, huge warehouses, restaurants, etc. Almost all the people I saw there were elderly, almost no children. And I thought, what will it be like 30 years from now, and all the old people are no longer with us? What will we do with few people, but so many buildings that are going to be abandoned, without people to use them or take care of them, because the population with the current decrease will not be enough to occupy everything? It is true that in the Middle Ages the population was 1/5 of what it is now, that the villages literally had 4 houses and a church. We will literally have whole towns to explore. Stories number 11. My crazy neighbor is trying to kill my cats. So my 40-year femme neighbor, I don't know her age and we also don't live in the best neighborhood, so how that goes, neighbor is mad because some cats came to her porch and started messing stuff up, which yes, we do have outdoor and indoor cats, but the cats she was trying to describe, saying they were ours, saying they're gray kittens, we only have one gray grown cat. So one morning me and my mom were standing inside, and out of nowhere she knocks on the door and my mom walks over and opens it, and she says, "Your cats are knocking down all of my stuff on my porch and pooping in my yard." And keep in mind, she has a pit bull that doesn't come from the greatest bloodline, and the dog gets loose from her cage, the fence kind, and runs around the whole neighborhood for like an hour and also ends up killing a bunch of our cats. And we never call animal control or anything and always forgave her. So my mom says them aren't my cats and I can't really do anything about it. And I only have one gray cat, so she starts saying, "So what are we going to do about this?" My mom just basically says I'd. So after my neighbor left my mom's house, not even to sex later, the cops are in front of my neighbor's house. And we look through the window like, did she really call the cops over some cats? So my mom, thinking it was because of that, she gets her shoes on and walks out and over to my neighbor, and basically implying that how many times her dog has got loose and killed a bunch of animals and how irresponsible she is and how she never once called the animal control. Literally, when the dog would get loose it would be an hour before they catch her, and she would drive around looking for the dog. So then, after that, she basically starts going off on my mom, and my mom is being calm the whole time and starts saying, "I'm gonna beat you up and I'll tie the dog in front of my house so it kills your cats in front of the cop." So the cop looks sick of the neighbor cause she always has the cops in front of her house like all the time. So the cop sat back and said to my mom, "Just go back to your yard." My mom said calmly okay and goes back. So a couple hours later, this woman is that crazy that she literally takes her dog and ties it up to the tree, which is by my driveway too, and our yards are closer to each other, so it basically counts as still in her yard, but still. So she ties the dog and gives her a huge raw turkey and basically influencing her to kill cats, and stood on her porch staring at the dog for a couple of minutes, then goes back in the house and comes out and does the same thing. So I don't know what to do, she's psycho. Stories number 12. Relationship with my adult kids has been severed. I will try to be brief. Was married for 17 years and we had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Our marriage gradually deteriorated over time, mostly from her drinking and her spending us into a whole W, me knowing in the end we separated semi-amicably and divorced. My ex got involved with a man while the divorce was being finalized. We didn't have any major arguments over the divorce settlement and had equal custody. Over time my wife had problems with her new boyfriend and left him. I took the kids while she got her life together. The kids were 10 and 12. A year later she went back with her boyfriend who was abusive. I filed for full custody of the children and received it, but was open to her seeing our kids when she wanted. A year later she followed her boyfriend to another state and was there for about 20 years. She saw the kids maybe 3 to 4 times during that period, but mostly communicated with them by phone and online. I was always there for them. Attended school functions, teacher conferences, coaching their sports activities, and just being a responsible father. I covered their college costs, made sure they had everyday necessities, and they adjusted well. When they were in their late 20s, I found a wonderful woman and got married again. I moved in with her and let my son and his new wife live in my house for a minimal cost. After paying for their wedding and honeymoon, they lived there 6 years. During that period of time, I had to deal with my daughter's addiction and treatment. Over several years, their mother was still absent during this period in their lives. They are both around 40 years old now, and I don't have a relationship with them. During the last decade, my son and his wife never asked me and my new wife over for a BBQ or a round of golf or spending time with them. I spoke with my son and told him I just wanted to spend more time with him and wondered why the distance. As I lived 25 minutes away, all he said was that I wouldn't want to know why, and left it at that. With my daughter, she's settled down now with a child and a significant other, and all she does to keep in touch is to text me once in a while, but hasn't invited me to visit her. Come for Thanksgiving, Christmas, watch my grandson play sports, etc. She only lives 3 hours away. I've invited her family to come visit, but there always seems to be an excuse of why she can't. I don't feel any bond with them anymore, don't feel like rebuilding it, as I am retired and happy with my life now, and no, I never abused them, spoke negatively about their mom, or anything like that. Plus they were close with my parents growing up. Anyone else experienced this type of disconnection over time? Stories number 13. How I've been living across from two pedophiles for almost 8 years. So I'm a 17 meters and my family consists of mom, dad, 10-month-old brother and 8-year-old sister. And just last night, I was working and I get home around 9, and I was talking with my mom. And my dad wasn't home, ATP, and my mom said we don't actually had any food in the house, and this 'cause we went on vacation earlier this week. So now I told her I was gonna go get me something. She said, okay. I'm walking outside, and I see headlights that aren't moving, so I'm intrigued and I see a cop car. Then down the street I see 2 other cop cars with their emergency lights on, etc. Well, now I'm just standing there looking. And then I see a neighbor, we will call him Joe. He starts walking towards me. I'll wave, say hey, and he gets closer. Says hello. I ask what's going on, if you don't mind me asking, in case it's personal. Well, he says no, you should know, and says that well, those 2 guys that live down there are pedophiles and they abuse the kid that lives in their home. Now my mother has come outside to see what's going on. Well, he tells her. And I was like, I'm hungry, mom, so if you're okay, I'm gonna leave to go get something. She's like, yeah, go ahead. And now I'm in my car and decide I'm gonna call a good friend and neighbor who lives 3 doors behind me. BC, she's a year younger and her mom and dad live with her, and tell her what's going on. Then I hang up, and now I'm halfway down the street and I call my mom to see if she's alright, and she says yeah, still with Joe, and he said that basically these guys beat on the kid and well, you can gather the rest. Then says Pedo 2 is recently moved in with Pedo 1, and one of them likes young boys, the other young girls, and this kid goes to the Joe's house for safety sometimes and tells Joe what's going on with his bruises. And tonight the kid said to basically call the police for clarification. I think in the past police have been called to this house, but we thought it was for drugs because one of the guys who lives there used to walk around our neighborhood and look sketchy, and we saw him drop things in people's garbage cans. So Elle was like holy shit, etc. and said well, I'm about to be on busy road, I'll see you at the house. She said okay, and I get food, come back home, cops are gone and my dad's home, and well, my mom says that they arrested the one who got beaten up and the other one is still there. Again, my dad said Pedo 1 is the uncle to Pedo 2. And for now that's all I have to this story. If I get updates I'll share more, but if anybody knows a subreddit where I can reveal these men's names, photo, and address please. Could be more than glad to get these men posted. Stories number 14. User with a non-issue that was fixed created an actual issue. We had a ticket come in today from a user who said their Van SharePoint syncing wasn't working. We remoted on, and what the issue turned out to be was that the status of the files were mostly set to online only with the cloud icon. The guy sat next to me has green ticks though. Why don't I have those? I tried to explain the reason and that it wasn't an issue at all, but he was having none. He wanted those green ticks on everything, so I right-clicked a SharePoint library of 250 gigabytes and made it available on his device. After many hours of syncing, it was finally done, and he had his precious green ticks. He phoned back to complain his device was running incredibly slowly. He had a 256 gigabytes drive which was now completely full. Stories number 15. Aita for telling my boyfriend he is not entitled to know about my pregnancy. I am 25, my boyfriend is 34, and we have been together for 2 years. In March this year I found out I was pregnant, but it ended up being a chemical pregnancy. However, throughout the first month before the loss he became this very mean person, didn't check on me so often. All of a sudden said to me would no longer get married. He was about to propose, kept adding random females, saying a child cannot lock him up and other things. I used to tell him I felt like I was in a dark hole and always anxious, and he would just ignore it, tell me to take myself out of it. Then the day came where I noticed I was bleeding. We didn't speak much of the day, but that night I told him that I had began bleeding and we may have to reschedule a meetup. We had his words were, "Oh sorry, I'm not feeling too well myself. I'll tell my brothers to cancel." I passed the pregnancy alone, and it was a very dark time for me. After that I broke up with him. Now that I am heading to healing, he has been asking to speak to the clinic to know what happened with my pregnancy. I told him I was told it was a chemical pregnancy and I wanted to move on and not go back to it, as hearing it again affects me. He insisted and asked me to tell the clinic to call him, which I did, but that was not enough for him, and he asked me to take him to the clinic. I refused. His reasoning is that he deserves to hear face to face what happened. My reasoning is he does not, because he left me alone anyway. Aita for refusing his request. Stories number 16. Kevin entering the workforce. I used to work in logistics for a major sportswear company. In this position, one talked to all departments, and because any manager or lead in a department was too busy with big picture issues tied to any event, they dumped getting everything there to the new hires, usually somebody fresh out of college. In regards to the actual move, I did all the work on the actual transportation arrangements. All I needed were some deadline dates and of course pickup and delivery locations. Because the people were fresh out of college, they had to overthink everything and make a major production of it all. If you weren't too bright, and I had to be sure to get all the correct information, but it usually wasn't a problem. I just trying my best to help them so they could focus on the event. One woman though was so incompetent, just getting the basics was near impossible. She calls me up and says she needs to get a shipment of t-shirts to our in-house screen printer. Okay, this is an easy one. Me: sure thing, Kevin, just let me know where to pick up at and I'll get this going. Kevin: what do you mean? Me: where do I need to pick up the t-shirts that need to be screened? Kevin: what do you mean? Me: where will the truck need to pick up the t-shirts at that need to be sent to the screen printer? Kevin: I don't know, would that be name of company? Me: if that's where the t-shirts are that need to be screened, yes. Kevin: I'm not sure what you're asking. Me: I just need the location where the t-shirts are so I know where to send a truck to pick them up. Kevin: what do you mean? This went on for a few more minutes. She even got upset and screamed at me that she was sorry for wasting my time and was going to hang up. I somehow calmed her down and, trying a new approach, found out who the project was for, then offered to call them to get this sorted out. That was a short email and I had everything I needed in the response. T-shirts got picked up and screened in plenty of time for the event. I never spoke to Kevin again and think she only lasted a couple months. Stories number 17. My friends and I cannot stop playing a board game. It ruined our lives. I can barely remember what life was like before we found the game. That June night we were 6 high school kids bored out of our minds, trying our best to fill the void. Most of us had part-time summer jobs. We were hesitant to spend money on anything. We all hoped to save for college. After what felt like hours going back and forth on deciding what to do for the day, He took a walk around our suburban neighborhood. It was the end of a yard sale day and most people were packing up and heading inside. A few people still remained outside, eager to sell. We didn't really have the intention to buy anything, but I still combed through the last pieces of used crap people set out. I always think I'm going to find some kind of amazing treasure, but always end up questioning my purchases hours later. I found myself digging through a shoebox full of old board games. I thought I might be able to find a new game for all of us to play. I also figured since it was the end of the day I might get it for super cheap. At first I only saw games that looked into bad of shape to even buy that. Or it was a game I knew my friends wouldn't want to play. I've always been a board game fan, but not so much my friends. I had to beg them for months to play D&D with me, and they were only willing to play it for my birthday. I'm always trying to find new games that might interest them. I was ready to give up, but then I saw a game at the bottom that I'd never heard of, Tasks with Friends, with the tagline, "The game you and your friends will never want to put down." The box looked colorful and pretty worn out, but not so bad that we couldn't play with it. It just looked well loved. I tried to open it up, but the sides were taped down. I mean, it makes sense. You don't want all the pieces to come flying out after all. I didn't see a price tag or sign for the price, so I found the owner and asked her, "Excuse me, how much are you charging for the game?" I said eagerly to the woman while admiring the bright-colored box that lacked any company branding or trademarking. "Oh, that old thing. I don't know. Do you have $1 on you?" the woman said as she put the yard sale leftovers into one big box. As she told me the price, I perked up and started to dig through my purse. She either got annoyed with me taking too long or just wanted to be nice and told me to just take it. She immediately started to back up her box again. "So is the game any fun?" I said to her awkwardly. "I actually never played it. My friend Jun gave it to me a few years back because her kids got obsessed over it or something, so she just wanted to get rid of it. She thought my family would enjoy it, but we just never got around to playing it," she said with her back facing me. I kindly thanked her and called for my friends to come over to see what I got. As I called for them, I could see their curiosity over what I found. That excitement was quickly lost. When they saw I had a board game in my hands, they rolled their eyes, knowing that I would try and get them to play it with me. "Kate, you know we don't do the board game thing," Aaron said to me, annoyed. "Come on guys, you've all been going on and on all day about how bored you are. At least try this game. Looks really fun. I actually haven't played this one before, so we can all learn together," I said as I saw their faces start to grow curious again. James came up to me and gestured at the box in my hand. I gave it over to him, hoping that he would be convinced to play. After looking at it, I knew if he was down to play, everyone else would be too. As he held the box, I could see the expression on his face change from doubt to excitement. "Damn, this game looks like fun. Let's go play," he said with a giddy tone I'd never heard him use. He started to jog in the direction of his house with me close behind, and the rest of our friends slowly walking behind me, looking confused as to why James was so excited to play a board game when he was normally the person most against them. We all made it back to James' house. We walked in and were greeted by his mom, confused as to what made her emotionless son so excited. As we stood in the entryway not sure what to say, we heard him calling us from the basement. We ran down the steps to see the game fully set up on the floor and ready to play. He was sitting on a pillow reading the instructions with intense concentration. "James, are we actually playing this game?" Bree whined. "Yes, here, I promise. If you just sit down and start to play, you will have fun." I had a chance to learn the rules while you guys got here, James insisted as he shuffled a pile of cards one last time. After a few minutes of back and forth, everyone was sitting down and ready to play. James explained the rules of the game directly from the intrusion manual. Each player starts with their token at the start of the board. Players will take turns drawing a card from the top of the deck. Each card will have a task. If that task is completed, you may move the number of spaces that are specified on the card. Once you see the card, it will say secret or public at the top. If it's a secret card, do not read it out loud. This task must be completed without anyone noticing or questioning the action on the card. For example, hold someone's hand, sing a song, insult someone, etc. Just complete the task without anyone calling you out. If a player does something you believe to be a secret task, say out loud "Deceiver." If the player was caught, they will show their card and fail their task. Do not move any pieces. If the person who calls out "Deceiver" wrongly accuses the player, then they must move back one space. The accused player will keep that card and continue to try and complete the task. Once you have successfully Completed a secret task, you may announce task complete and move your token forward as many spaces as specified on your task card. If you pull a public card, you must read it out loud. These cards will include things like saying the alphabet backwards, don't say or until your next turn, singing a karaoke song, playing dead for 1 minute, etc. Some cards have time limits and specific instructions. Every card will clearly state the task. The player who gets their token to the end of the board wins. The game will start with the player who lied last drawing a card. Take turns drawing one card at a time, with the person to your right going next. Have fun. James folded the paper instructions up and set them by his side, asking if anyone had questions. No one said anything. It seemed like they all understood the game fine, or maybe they just didn't care yet. "Alright, let's get the game started," James proclaimed, but was met with blank stares. "Come on guys. I just read the rules. You should know how the game starts. We have to start with who lied last." Everyone remained silent. No one wanted to say their last lie. "This is so dumb. I guess I'll go. I told my mom that Henry wasn't hanging out with us when I left the house there. I'll go first," Bree blurted out as she leaned forward to grab a card. As she looked at it, she rolled her eyes. "This is so dumb. Why are we playing this game? Come on, Bree, it can't be that bad. Can you read it out loud?" Henry said, sensing that the card was embarrassing. "Ooh, public card. Pretend to be a cow for 3 minutes." She threw the card down and looked at Henry, who was to her right, expecting her turn to just be over and not wanting to even try. The rest of the group started to laugh and encourage her, chanting her name and begging her to do it. After about a minute, she gave in and got down on her hands and knees. When she first started, she was annoyed, staring daggers at Henry as her time ran down. I could see in her face her feelings towards the game change, and the timer went off. She didn't stop for a few seconds. She kept going because she was laughing so hard. "That was so fun. Someone move my token up 1 space. Henry, it's your turn now," Bree said with a giggle and a newfound excitement. Henry looked at her in disbelief. He was so used to her cold exterior, oblique, that this game made it melt away. Henry picked up his card. He motioned, zipping his lips shut, and shook his head. Me, Bree, and James all squealed in excitement, with the rest of the group looking lost, not understanding what they missed that got us so excited. Since Henry had a secret card, it was AJ's turn. She was chuckling along, but clearly just doing it because she didn't want to look dumb for asking us. It was so funny. She pulled her card and read it out loud. It's a public card," she said with a dry tone, trying to gauge the room and observe everyone else as they celebrated her public card. "It says, have to do jumping jacks until my next turn." As she stood up, everyone in the room cheered her on except for Aaron. As she got to her feet, she paused and looked over at Aaron. I can imagine he felt like the only sane person in the room and wasn't sure what was going on. After a second of hesitation, she started her jumping jacks. Aaron looked around at us, eyeing him down, desperately waiting for him to read his card. By the time he finally picked up his card, AJ had started to laugh while doing her jumping jacks. "Sorry, it's a secret card," Aaron said nervously as everyone wiggled with happiness. "Well, looks like it's my turn," I said as I leaned forward, but was cut off by Henry quickly standing to his feet and lunging towards AJ, tackling her to the ground, interrupting her jumping jacks and making a loud thump as they hit the ground. "Henry, what the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you?" Aaron yelled in a serious tone that turned into him trying not to laugh by the end of the sentence. "I'm calling a deceiver on that tackle," Henry, Bree stated with a laugh. Okay, you got me," Henry said, while still laying on AJ from his tackle. They both smiled over the event, even though it clearly hurt when they hit the floor, but you have to admit that one was tricky. I tried to start my turn again but was interrupted by Aaron. "Hot. Task completed," I yelled at Henry and didn't get caught. "I get to move to spaces," he said, as he smugly moved his token to spaces on the game board. We kept playing the game for hours. We finished the first game and everyone wanted to play again. And again and again. I looked around at them in disbelief. It felt impossible that all my friends were enjoying a board game. It was a dream come true. After years of begging, finally, normally at hangouts like this by 10 p.m. Bree and Henry would wander off to make out in some closet. AJ goes home to sleep, and Aaron, James, and I are left to awkwardly try and find something to do with just the 3 of us. It got to be 2 a.m. and we were either exhausted or our parents calling us telling us to come home, or we would be in serious trouble. We all went back to our houses, but all had a hard time going to sleep. We stayed up until 5 a.m. for some of us, just talking about the game over text strategies when we could play again. Funny things that happened that night, we couldn't get enough. The games we played started out pretty simple, no tasks got too wild. And while we really loved to play, it wasn't like it was taking over our whole lives, not yet at least. Because we played the game at James' house the first time, we ended up just keeping it there even. Though the game was technically mine, we always hung out at his place, so it just made sense. It was around 10 a.m. the next day when our group chat started to blow up with everyone asking when we could get together that day now, because it was summertime. And we were all teenagers. We either had work in the mornings or most of us slept until noon. But not me. I was always up early waiting for my friends to get up so I had something to do, or trying to make some money as a dog walker. That being said, I was shocked when I saw that everyone was up and everyone claimed to not have work. James didn't have a job at that point, so of course he was free. But everyone else was too. That did not happen often. We all met up at James' place at around 11 a.m. that same day. Everyone eager to play. We must have played 10 games that day. The games consisted of us doing accents, being Dan from saying certain words, backflips and so on. Nothing too weird. We realized after a few games that we never got a repeating card, not one time. This was strange because there were probably 200 cards in the deck, but even with us playing a dozen games, every card was new. I knew I had a couple of dogs to walk that evening, but texted the owners to cancel. No way was I going to leave while all my friends were enjoying a board game. This much I knew. AJ said something about her having a shift at 4 p.m., but when the time got close, she went to the other side of the room and called out of work. She didn't even mention it to us or talk about it. She just stood up, walked to the corner, talked to her manager and came back. No one thought anything of it. After a few minutes, she loudly proclaimed task completed, moving her token up 3 spaces. We looked around confused at what task she had, and the card said call out sick to work. We were surprised by this card, to say the least. It was the first time a card had to do with something outside of the players. Everyone else in the group canceled any plans they had for the rest of the day, although AJ was the only person who completed a task for it. It was around 11 p.m., which made it a full 12 hours of the game. Bree pointed out that we forgot to eat any food all day. After thinking about it, I realized that I hardly drank any water and went to the bathroom like one time all day. Things started to get out of hand that night. AJ pulled a card that said to go into a closet with the player to her left and kiss them for 5 minutes. Of course, that player was Henry. Bree was not happy, but she knew how serious everyone was about the game. She told him she wasn't okay with it, but he insisted that it was just a game and it wouldn't mean anything. It was worth 4 points for both people who would go into the closet. AJ and Henry stood up and went to find a suitable space, all while Bree freaked out and said she would end things with Henry if he went through with it. It was never completely clear what Henry and Bree were. They don't like to use boyfriend and girlfriend, but everyone knew they were a thing. Aaron tried to call it off, saying this wouldn't be worth it and to just stop, but it was like they didn't even hesitate. Bree sat on the carpet and started to cry as the timer on her phone counted down an agonizing 5 minutes. I thought I would either hear kissing or nothing at all, but instead I heard talking. It started as soft whispers, then crying and yelling. They stayed in for about 2 minutes, then came tumbling out. That's it, Henry, I can't believe you would do that for a game. We are over, Bree said with a red, wet face. Henry came and silently sat down with AJ. AJ was now beet red as well. Despite 3 of my friends just going through something I couldn't wrap my head around, they all looked at James calmly and nodded for him to pull his card. No one had moved any tokens forward, so it was clear they failed their task of kissing in a closet. James hesitantly leaned in for a card and read it to himself, as we were bombarded by Bree, AJ, and Henry all saying, task completed, and then shot confused faces at each other. They all threw down their cards and moved their tokens forward. Bree's card said break up with Henry. Henry's card said make AJ cry, and AJ's card said tell Henry you love him. All those cards were worth way more than the stupid kissing card, so the kissing task was ignored, and they all individually completed their tasks without ever communicating it with each other. They all saw opportunities to complete a task worth more points, and they took it. After this moment, it was like nothing even happened. The girls stopped crying and started laughing and saying how impressive the completion of the tasks were. Wait guys, something is wrong here, do you not see it? Aaron said with concern, trying to take a break from the game. Oh stop, you are just jealous you didn't get to move 6 spaces, Bree said with arrogance. No, I'm not talking about that. Does no one find it weird that the cards are using our names now? Not only that, but the cards are somehow interacting with other cards to almost try and make bad things happen. James blurted. As he said that, it was like we all froze in our spots, all looking at each other. Realizing how hungry and tired we were, looking around at the room. Seeing how big of a mess we made, Bree grabbing Henry's hand with a look of sadness. And coming to grips with how they hurt each other for a game. I looked down at my arm and was reminded of the crud things I had drawn on my arm with Sharpies. In order to move one space in an earlier game, I saw Aaron's jeans that were now cut into shorts with some kid's scissors, looked at James' legs and saw his one shaved leg lying crossed over the untouched hairy one. I looked at AJ and saw she had a huge purple bruise on her arm. At that moment, I remembered feeling like an addict, trying to get off drugs. I knew this game was hurting us. I wanted to stop but felt like I couldn't. I could see the same feeling in all my friends' eyes, to the urge to say one more game, just one more time, just to feel the high of this dumb game again. I think we need to take a break from this game, guys. It's getting kinda weird and out of hand, I murmured with the strength that I somehow mustered up. It was like telling an alcoholic you were taking away their beer. They all looked horrified at the idea of not playing the game for even a moment. Just then James' mom came downstairs and was horrified at what she was looking at. 6 disheveled teenagers all sitting in a circle, looking like they had all just been through a war. Not only that, but her whole basement was a mess. James, what the hell happened to your leg? Are you all playing that dumb game again? I can't believe this. Everyone out of my house. James, you are grounded. His mom shouted with rage in her voice. We all ran out of his house, not saying a word to each other, just trying to get home and get some food. As I sat in my kitchen with my long-sleeve sweatshirt covering my now inked up arm, I tried to eat a sandwich I made myself. I was starving. I could feel and hear my stomach growling, but my need to play the game was so much stronger, so strong, I didn't even want to eat. I sat at my dining room table staring at that sandwich for what felt like an eternity, telling myself that I needed to eat and I'd feel better if I did. But somehow the thought of the game was taking up all my energy. I was holding back the urge to text my friends. It took every ounce of self-control I had left. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket and I involuntarily grabbed my phone. So fast it was in my hand before I could even think about it. It was James in our group chat. Hey guys, so do you think that was a long enough break? I think I can find where my mom put the game and bring it to that old treehouse back behind Mr. Baker's house. I couldn't hold back anymore. I had to play again. Before I knew it, I was sneaking out of my house, trying to remember where the old treehouse was. As I ran through the neighborhood, my phone lit up with texts from my friends saying they were on their way. After running around for a while, I found the treehouse. I couldn't believe I had such a hard time finding it, considering how much time a few of us used to spend in it during middle school. I could hear all their voices sounding annoyed. As I was the last one to get there, I climbed up the old wooden ladder to find all my friends sitting in a perfect circle, barely able to see the board or each other. It was around this time something strange happened within the game. It wasn't about winning the game necessarily, it was about playing as many games as possible and completing as many tasks as we could. If anyone won a game or finished a task, everyone felt a high, not just the winner. Because of this, players stopped calling each other out for trying to complete secret tasks. So people stopped being so secretive to complete secret tasks. They still kept them a secret because it was a rule of the game, just no one called them out. This made us all more ruthless. I sat down on the hardwood in between Bree and James. Our next game began. AJ drew a card first, and it was a secret card. She didn't seem giddy, she looked flushed and scared. In fact, it felt like the mood had shifted with everyone. We weren't laughing our butts off anymore. We were terrified to stop playing. It was something in our guts that made us have to play, like a virus growing in us, desperately trying to get out. Next, Aaron drew a card and read it out loud. Hold your breath. For 5 minutes he whispered with confusion. How am I supposed to do that? He said, trying to not get worried. It's not that the card was all that bad, it's that he knew he would stop at nothing to make it happen. He told us to keep playing the game while he did it and got a timer up on his phone. He took a few deep breaths, then held his nose shut and became extremely focused, not making eye contact with anyone. Next, it was James' turn. He had a secret card and didn't show much emotion towards it. Next, Bree nervously took a card, and yet again it was a secret card. In fact, we all drew a secret card until it was Aaron's turn again. It had been about 45 seconds and he was really focusing. And we didn't want to make him draw a card while trying to finish his task. As we sat and watched our friend become more and more red from holding his breath, we found ourselves in complete silence other than the wind weaving its way through the trees outside, and the soft sound of crickets in the distance. We all just stared at each other, terrified of what was on those secret cards. I knew I had to use every little bit of self-control I had left in my body to not try and complete the task on my card. I was betting that's why everyone was being so quiet. They all had tasks that they didn't want to do but felt the uncontrollable urge to do it. My card said that I needed to remove one of James' fingers by any means necessary. It was worth 10 points. I couldn't believe I wanted to complete it so badly, but I was frozen figuring out how to do it. As I stared at him, I noticed he was looking over at Bree. I figured that his card had something to do with her. It seemed like everyone was fixated on someone else. I glanced down at the timer Aaron had, and I was amazed to see he had been holding his breath for almost 2 minutes. Just as I was about to comment on it, chaos broke loose, everyone jumping onto someone else, making it one big pile of people viciously grabbing each other. I didn't read their cards myself, but it was clear by their actions what their tasks were. Of course, as you know, I was going for James' fingers, but James was ripping at Bree's ear. Bree was pulling Henry's hair out. Henry was tearing at AJ's neck, and AJ was trying to open my mouth to get my tongue. For a solid 30 seconds we were all attaching each other. When Aaron passed out from holding his breath, this seemed to snap us out of our trance for a bit. We ran over to our friend and checked his pulse. After we realized he was still breathing, we got lost in the game again, and all jumped on each other to keep brutalizing one another. Just as I got my teeth around James' pinky finger, we saw a bright flashlight coming through the cracks in the treehouse and froze. A police officer popped his head through the bottom entrance to the treehouse and looked at us in horror. He saw Aaron out cold in the corner alone with the rest of us in a pile of blood and ripped out hair. The officer grabbed us one by one and practically threw us to the ground, where another officer put us each in handcuffs. We had hours and hours of questioning that night, but we were all released by sunrise. No one was badly injured, just a lot of cuts, bruises, and a few patches of hair missing. Even Aaron was okay. Honestly, Aaron made it out in the best shape. We all got grounded for the rest of the summer. All the parents agreed that we needed to stop spending time together because they insisted on us having some beef between us all. None of us mentioned the board game was at the treehouse that night because we didn't want them to take it away from us. We knew we had to play it again. However, they caught on to it and banned us from ever playing it again. We spent the next 3 weeks of summer miserable. Each one of us tried to fill the hunger to play the game by playing other board games or attempting to remake it, but it wasn't the same. It was the night before school started, and I got a message from James through Skype. Our parents banned us from talking to each other, but it seemed my parents and James' parents forgot about Skype. He told me I had to come over right now. I managed to hop out my window and ran for James' house. I got to his house in what felt like record time and jumped down the fire escape to the basement. There I saw the rest of my friends all sitting by the fireplace weeping. As I got closer, I saw they were covered in ash. I saw tiny little bits of what was left of the game lying out on the ground. She burned it. My mom burned it, James said, in between tears. Everyone was desperately trying to find any pieces that were left of our precious game. Some of them rubbed the ashes of the game on their faces and arms to try and feel something again. As I watched them, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I looked over to our normal hang-out area and saw it. I saw the board game sitting out, not just the box, but the whole game was out and ready to play. Are you sure that your mom burnt it, James?" I said as my eyes got glazed over looking at the beautiful board game sitting out for us to enjoy. "Yes, I'm sure she did it right in front of me so I'd stop looking for it." Just as James finished his sentence, he looked at me, and then at my eyeline. He saw the game. The next week of our lives was a whirlwind. After James' mom burned the game and it reappeared, we all ran away with the game. We stole a car from AJ's mom after we got a task card for it and left town. We would play the game in the car in random fast food restaurants and sometimes in parks. It's all we did all day. We would fall asleep playing the game and only manage to eat maybe a bag of chips or something small during the day. We kept moving because we didn't want to be found. In that week we all managed to lose our jobs and all missed the first week of our senior year of high school, all because we were addicted to a board game. I still remember the last game we ever played. It was a late Sunday night. We were actually in our town sitting in an old barn near the tree house we sat in before, all because the board game told us to. Up to that point we were hanging out far away from home. We didn't want to be so close. We knew we could be found easily by our families and the authorities if we were too close. But we had no choice, we were slaves to the game. At this point we were in bad shape. With every new game started we broke down a little bit more. We surrounded the board with tired eyes and growling stomachs, missing teeth, and bruised bodies, concussed heads, and broken toes. "Please, we have to stop. I can't do it anymore. I want to go home," Bree said, as we were about to start our next game. "I can't imagine not playing this game. It's all I ever want to do. I think I might die if I couldn't play it. I know the game hurts us, but it would hurt so much more if we stopped playing it," Henry said with a gravelly voice. "Guys, why are we talking? We have to play again," Aaron said, while trying not to cough. "I know we have to. I've never hated something and loved something so much in my whole life," Bree remarked. We started the game with shaky hands, moving slowly and holding our breath whenever someone looked at their card. AJ, and first she reached down and picked a card, cringing to herself after reading it in her head. Next was Bree. She rolled her eyes and she read off the words, "Public card. Waterboard the player to your right for 5 minutes. Both players move 8 spaces," Bree timidly said, as she glanced at James sitting next to her. "I can't say we really knew how to waterboard someone, but we laid him on his back with his legs elevated and dripped water over him. We let him take a card for his turn before Bree started the waterboarding, so we didn't have to wait for 5 minutes for them to be done. His card was a secret card." We continued the game with the awful background sounds of gagging and choking. Next it was Aaron's turn. He read his card and winced. He closed his eyes tight and opened them again as if he was hoping he was in a dream. As he opened his eyes he slowly looked at all of us, making eye contact with each one of us. Just then James was done being waterboarded, and he and Bree came to join us. I was so glad they were done, not just because I was sick of the sounds, but because it meant they got to move 8 spaces. Aaron stood to his feet slowly. I prepared myself because I figured he was about to hurt us. In an instant he ran out of the barn and into our stolen car. We all looked around confused as to where we went, but kept playing the game as he drove off. Next it was my turn. Public card. Jump off the roof of the barn. 9 points, I said out loud nervously. Henry and AJ jumped up and started to walk outside, not even questioning if I would do it or not. They weren't wrong in the assumption. Before I could even think, I was on my feet, trying to find a way up to the roof. I found my way to the top of the 10-foot tall building. I took a deep breath and leapt off and was met with a hard thump as I hit the ground. I felt a gut-wrenching pain in my right ankle as I landed. I knew I broke it. I had no doubt in my mind I was thrashing in pain, grabbing my ankle as my friends dragged me back into the barn. We knew we had to keep playing. Next Henry took a card. He picked it from the pile with his eyes closed and brought it to his face while peeking just enough to see the words on the card, then closed his eyes again, trying to pretend he never read the words in the first place. Next AJ took a card. Even though it was a secret card, I knew it was about me. She glanced down at my ankle right after her eyes left the card. Just as James was reaching for his card, we saw Aaron walk back into the barn. We all sat in shock as his silhouette became clear and vivid in the doorway. Blood trickled down his arms and hands, dripping on the dirt. As we all stared at each other, his eyes were blank at first but then turned to pain. We watched him as he walked from the doorway to the game board, blood dripping on the game as he moved his token. 30 spaces. "Aaron, what have you done?" 30 spaces, AJ muttered in fear. "James, I am so sorry I had to," Aaron whimpered as sat in the dirt with his secret task card crinkled in his blooded fist. "Tell me what you did right now. What the hell does your card say? Show us," James yelled as he stood to his feet. Just as James was about to jump onto Aaron, Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out some matches we used to start small campfires. While we had been on the run, we all stood still waiting to see what he was about to do as he lit 3 matches and threw them into the nearby hay bales, igniting the whole inside of the barn. Without hesitation, AJ saw the opportunity and stomped on my ankle as hard as she could. If it wasn't broken before, it sure was now. I looked down at it too. See it now bent sideways. She then stomped on my other ankle, not breaking it, but making it so I couldn't walk. She moved her token 12 spaces. Even though I was in agony from the pain, I still felt such an intense high from her moving so many spaces. Aaron dropped his card in the midst of everything happening. James fell to his feet to see the card and started to weep as he read it out loud. "Secret card. Kill James' mom. Move 30 spaces," he said, With anger bubbling up, I can't believe you would do that for a dumb game. How could you do this to me? I couldn't control myself. Come on, you know what I mean. I couldn't control myself. Don't do anything you will regret. Aaron said cautiously. Oh, I think it's a little too late for not doing things we regret, James said, as he jumped onto Aaron. Choking him with all his strength, it seemed at that moment he was able to break free from the control of the game. He wasn't feeling the high of someone else completing a task. He just felt hate, red hot hate. I was overwhelmed, to say the least. The barn was in flames. James was trying to kill Aaron, and to make matters worse, AJ out of nowhere jumped up and dug a pocket knife into Bree's stomach. Now Bree and AJ were in a fighting match too. Henry and I sat across from each other in disbelief at our surroundings. He looked at me with death in his eyes as he reached for a card. It wasn't even his turn, but I don't think he cared anymore. He knew the others would be occupied for a while. The fire was getting bad. I knew I had to get out of that barn as soon as I could because of the damage done to my ankles. I couldn't walk, so I dragged my body out of the barn, taking the game with me. I made it a few feet and looked back to see Henry not moving. He set his card down on the board before I started to drag it with me, and I read it as I continued to crawl. Secret card. Let the fire overtake you. Move your token to the finish line and win the game. I was able to get out of the barn with the board game in hand. I sat and watched as the flames overtook Henry. He didn't even flinch when he caught on fire. As I saw it happen, I moved his token to the end space so he could win the game. One felt an intense high overtake my body as the game was complete. Only a few moments after Henry caught fire, the whole barn came down with all my friends in it. I looked at the burning barn and then back down at the game. I'm ashamed to say that my biggest worry was not knowing who I'd play with. Now I hate myself for thinking that, but that's how the game is. I tried to start a new game by myself and drew a card, but that's when I saw the sirens of police cars and fire trucks pull up next to me. I was immediately surrounded by people trying to give me medical attention, taking me away from my game. I scratched and threw my body around like a toddler not getting their way. I remember them giving me some kind of sedative and waking up in the hospital. I was the only person to make it out alive that night. All I could say to the doctors and my parents was that I needed the game, that I had to play the game. It was the only meaning to life. It was the only reason I had to live. My parents got me a great lawyer and I got out of everything by pleading insanity. Our families all knew the right people and had the right money to ensure the word never got out about the deaths. They even managed to make the death of James' mom disappear. When they told me my friends were all dead, I didn't have much of a reaction. I just kept asking where the game was. When they eventually told me the game was gone and never coming back, that's when I lost it. They had to put me into restraints because I kept hurting the hospital staff from my meltdowns. I started to threaten the staff and told them all the horrible things that would happen to them if they didn't get that game back to me. I eventually ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I yelled and screamed so much that I never had my voice. I hardly ever slept because all I thought about was the game and how I craved to play it again. My skin was red and torn up from my insistent picking due to the withdrawals. After months I felt numb, maybe from all the drugs they pumped me up with. Or perhaps I was so used to the withdrawals I didn't feel it as much. It still felt like I had an uncontrollable urge inside my bones, but I was able to hide it. They then sent me home. After a while I knew I had to mask my emotions for the game, pretend I didn't care anymore, even if it killed me inside to say it out loud. I walked into my bedroom, man. I felt like I was being treated like a baby. My old bed frame was gone, and it was just the mattress on the floor. All my chart shelves were taken down along with anything else I could possibly hurt myself with. I rolled my eyes, but knew my parents had to make these changes for me to even come home. I sat on my bed and I looked around at my room now, with a doorknob that locked from the outside to keep me in, as well as bars on my windows. I searched my room desperately to find something to take up my mind. That's when I dug through my closet and I saw it. I saw that beautiful, colorful box that I came to know so well, just hiding in the back of my closet waiting to be found. I knew it came back the first time it was destroyed, but it was feeling like it was a one-time thing. But here it was patiently waiting for me to come and play. I ripped open the box, giving myself a paper cut in the process, and started to play the game by myself. With all that being said, I can finally say task completed and share what my first card said in that solo game. Secret card. Spread the word about this game online so more people can join us. Move 20 spaces. So what do you say? Care to come join me for a game? Stories number 18. I need advice. My 24F boyfriend's 25 meters family has weird vibes update. The link above is the original post. I don't really know how to do updates, so I'm hoping this works. Thank you to everyone who left comments. Even if there were a few that weren't helpful, there was a lot to take in there that I hadn't realized, didn't know about, and made me realize there are some crappy people in this world. Frankly, I did not know what parentification was when that word kept popping up in the comments. I had to goggle it. I'm horrified by that thought. It's terrible. I just can't even begin to understand why parents would do that sort of thing. To answer a comment about Tyler's ability to clean and cook. He's an amazing cook and he does clean. I particularly love his Italian foods. He does his own laundry, does his share of chores, and I don't even have to ask him. So on to the update. It's long, but I tried to keep the details. I talked to Tyler this morning before he went to work. I just told him how the family dynamic was unique and I wasn't sure how to approach Tara because of it. I told him I didn't want to upset him, but I would feel bad to ignore her outright. I also expressed how much I wanted to support him and Sarah and his sibs because it just seemed like they had a bad experience in their childhood. I wanted to be there, but I needed a direction to not step on a landmine without meaning to. He told me to meet him at lunch and we would talk more then. I have flexible hours and I think he took the afternoon off because he didn't go back to work. When I got to the restaurant, he picked Sarah was with him. He told me very plainly a lot of it wasn't his to share, and if I wanted to know anything specific, I would have to ask Sarah. I felt a little ambushed, but Sarah reassured me. They were not mad. She was a little upset with Tyler for just dumping that on me without context though. We ordered our food and Tyler began to explain that Sarah was all he ever knew as a mom figure. His first memory is of her playing with him. He explained how she cooked, cleaned, watched the kids, got them to do their homework, taught them many things and more. Listening to all the effort she put into the different birthdays made me sad because it sounded like he should be talking about his mom. Eventually, it just seemed like he couldn't keep talking. Sarah took over and told me she was no saint. She lost her temper with the kids. She would forget things. She ignored them. Sometimes she cried in front of them so often it made them sad. She had a problem with some of Tyler's previous partners because he was too young. She wasn't a right fit, and any other excuse she could come up with to keep him and the others close. She got into therapy for her attachment problem. She worked through her weird need to protect at all costs to keep them closer than needed and everything. She explained their mother had never been diagnosed with anything, not PPD, not depression or anything else. She just loved the attention of being pregnant, of being a good mom, of being a mom to a baby and other things. Fixated on this image of a wonderful stay-at-home mom, Sarah thinks it's some weird competition for her sister who was a great mother and wife. Sarah was also the fix-it baby. She was basically the baby that baby trapped their father Jason. Tara got really drunk one night and yelled about how Sarah was supposed to fix things between her and Jason, but Jason only ever cared about Sarah and that's why he stayed, not because he wanted to. Sarah experienced more verbal and physical abuse from Tara over the years, more and more with each baby that occupied the little time Jason did have. Sarah had noticed Tara would go off her birth control intentionally more than once. Sarah and the Sids all also suspect Tara had cheated on Jason throughout their relationship, but none of them wanted to DNA it for evidence or proof. There would be no point, as Jason is, according to Sarah, a member of the sink cost fallacy. I asked about the wedding dress photo. Sarah told me that because of the number of babies and how young their parents were when they started having kids, they never had the chance to do a real wedding. Their wedding happened when Sarah was 16. And it was a backyard ceremony that turned into a nightmare. Anyone there knew Tara and Sarah brawled over the earrings, that Tara smashed the homemade cake because it wasn't from a bakery, and that the twins got violently sick after being offered shellfish. Sarah said there was a lot more to that, but we should revisit it. I asked what Tara had wanted to ask and Sarah laughed a cruel laugh. She said something like the crazy bee. She wants to know if you have considered having kids yet. She isn't getting any younger, and she wants grandkids to raise as her own. She told me at 14, if I ended up pregnant, she would take custody because I was too young and inexperienced, and that's what mothers do for their babies. I just couldn't wrap my head around that Tara hadn't even raised her own kids, but wanted her children's kids to raise. I looked at Tyler and he was quick to assure me that no one intended on handing over their kids. I asked what happened, that Sarah had custody of the kids, and she told me that wasn't up for discussion. Yet Blair was still underage and should have a say in who knows. I asked if it was that bad, why would she visit? Sarah said it was bad because of Tara, and Blair still loved their dad, but Jason would never leave Tara. She visits only when all of the sibs are there, and they will leave any time Blair asks. I have a horrible theory as to what happened, but I don't want to spread things that aren't true. We talked longer. Tyler told me I could treat his mom with as much or as little respect as I wanted. He and the others wouldn't make a fuss of it, but I was not to share things like their social media, their numbers, their addresses, and other personal things like pictures. And I think back to the story of little Sarah being tossed outside in freezing temperatures just because she forgot to do the dishes. It makes me never want to see Tara again. I told them I understood and promised to respect those boundaries. I also wouldn't try to fix anything. I don't think I could even bring myself to try. I would have cut contact years ago. If Tyler and I ever get to the point of talking children, Tara won't be in their lives. I'm going on a girls' trip next month with my sisters, and I invited Sarah along. She was really surprised but agreed. I did come clean about this Reddit post, and they did give me permission to update. Sarah was relieved to hear more places are making parentification a legal form of abuse. Sarah also wanted to thank everyone for insisting I don't try to fix anything.